In the center, it felt like I was going to fall into it. Another was so dark that our torches didn't seem to reach more than a few feet inside. In the center, there was a date stone.
Right.
It read, Robert Smirke, 1835.
Robert Smirke.
Balance and fear.
Balance and fear.
I don't know how much you know about famous London architects, but Robert Smirke was one of the foremost proponents of the Gothic revival in the early 19th century. His work was some of the first to use concrete and cast iron, and often described as theatrical, a description that makes a lot of sense when you look at the grand columns of the British Museum, his most famous building. Later, I would look up a list of his works and discover that he had indeed built the Carlton Club in that exact spot. It had been destroyed in the Second World War during the Blitz, and the club itself had moved premises, but it looked like the underground foundations, or whatever this place was, had not been damaged.
That makes me wonder, right? What's the name of the place? The Carlton Club?
Exact spot. His most famous building. Later, I would look up a list of his works and discover that he had indeed built the Carlton Club in that.
That's what it sounds like, the Carlton Club, right? Unless I'm mishearing that. But I wonder if that club was supposed to be where representatives, avatars of these entities or whatever would, they could socialize together, but then go down below into this basement and do whatever rituals they were doing, to these beings, entities, or whatever. But then just when World War II happened, the place got destroyed and they had to move, So that's kind of fascinating. What's going on, everybody? John Matrix here. Hope you're all doing well. Wherever you're at, whenever you're watching this, we're going to be jumping into the Magnus Archives episode 35 today, titled Old Passages. Links, as always, will be down below in the description to the Rusty Quill Podcast YouTube channel, the Magnus Archives playlist, and to their website. So please do me a favor. If you've been enjoying the Magnus Archives series as much as I have, be sure to go to their YouTube channel, hit the like on all the videos you've enjoyed, hit that sub button if you haven't already. Check out their YouTube memberships, their Patreon, and their website for ways to give them some love and support if you would like to. It's a great series so far. I've really been enjoying it. I hope you guys have been enjoying the ride along with me. You can do the same for my channel if you'd like to. There's a join button underneath the video, as well as a link in the description to the YouTube membership benefits and tiers that I have to offer, so you can check that out if you'd like to. There's also a bunch of playlists on the channel for other universes that I've done reactions to, Warhammer 40k, the SCP Foundation, stuff like that. So you can take a look at those if any of that would have any interest for you. Regardless, I just appreciate you guys taking the time out of your busy day to come in and hang out and watch the video, check out the channel. Thank you for doing so. I greatly appreciate it. So yeah, if you enjoyed this video of mine, consider leaving a like and a sub. That helps me and the channel grow. With all the YouTube stuff done, has to be done on every video. Let's jump into this here. We're gonna be checking out, like I said, Magnus Archives episode 35, Old Passages. Ominous strings are going round.
Rusty Quill presents the Magnus Archives. Episode 35, Old Passages.
Old Passages. Old magic.
Statement of Harold Silvana.
I mean, if there's nothing to see here, we might as well skip this episode then and just go to episode 36. I mean, if this one's not important, we should just jump ahead. Why bother doing this one, you know what I'm saying?
Regarding discoveries made during the renovation of the Reform Club, Pall Mall. Original statement given June 4th, 2002. Audio recording by Jonathan
2002.
Sims, head archivist of the Magnus Institute, London. Statement begins. I'm a builder, sort of. I always find myself using the word craftsman or artisan, but that's mostly because of my client base. I specialize in renovation and alterations on listed buildings and those of historical or architectural significance. In simple terms, it's not much different to any other sort of construction work, except it takes about 3 times as long and costs 10 times as much. That's not to say I rip people off. You need to spend almost half the time just planning exactly how you're going to tackle any given job, while preserving or recreating the original architecture as much as possible. And then you have to be incredibly careful when you're doing the work. I'm quite serious when I say that if you're not paying attention and keeping the alterations well documented, you can get sued for millions over knocking out the wrong brick. Plus the materials aren't cheap. So yes, my services are expensive, but me and my team are worth every penny. And the sort of people I deal with, or should I say the sort of people whose personal assistants I deal with, can afford it. I don't have...
Something tells me we might be dealing with the Lucas family again. I don't know, just dealing with money. And after the Bosun's episode, where it sounds like the Lucas family might have some far global reaching hands and getting into a lot of things, something just tells me we might be getting into them again. But we'll see. We'll see.
A company per se. People hire me for me, and I have a small team I trust to help out with the work itself. They're technically freelance contractors, but the pay's good enough, and in London at least, there's enough work that they're happy to wait on my call. I found plenty of interesting things in this job. I suppose that's not unexpected when you're digging around old buildings. We got kicked off a job once when we found some bones under a very venerable country house that will remain nameless, as the owners contacted the British Museum, who couldn't take over fast enough. There have also been a few jewelry pieces that found their way to other museums, and once we found a box of 17th century erotic poems that I think are currently languishing in the storerooms of the V&A Museum, but I never found anything like what was under 100 Pall Mall. We'd been called in to do...
Isn't that address or name been brought up before? 100 Pall Mall? That sounds familiar. Hasn't that been brought up before?
Poems that I think are currently languishing in the storerooms of the V&A Museum, but I never found anything like what was under 100 Pall Mall. We'd been called in to do some work on the basement and ground floor of the Reform Club. It wasn't anything major, some upkeep on a few of the historic pieces, replace a few of the earlier renovations. The amount of actual work involved was minimal, but it was a Grade 1 listed building, so the amount of care we had to take stretched it into a week-long job. It didn't help that we had to schedule around the fact that it's still a very active social venue, so we could only actually come out of the basement when it wasn't full of people too important to see builders. Grade 1 listing is a significant payday, though, so I certainly wasn't going to rock the boat. It was about 2 in the morning when the kid showed up. It was just me and Rachel Turley, who does most of our marble work, though we were mostly just doing surveying at that point. Alfred Bartlett was out getting coffee, though God knows where from at that time of night. We were just kicking our heels, really, since he's the plumber and we needed his expertise. Now, Alf has been in the business for nearly 40 years, and there wasn't a thing he didn't know about water or sewage systems. But we often joke that it's pushed everything else out of his head. I think he must have forgotten to lock the door when he headed out, and that's how the kid got in. That said, this was still the first week in March, and it was pretty cold, so I'm surprised we didn't notice the draft. In the end, I suppose it doesn't matter. The fact is that Rachel and I had been sat there chatting for maybe 5 minutes when we noticed we weren't alone. In the doorway, leading back to the stairwell, stood a thin figure. He looked to be in his late teens, I'd guess. He was dressed all in black, with heavy-looking boots and a t-shirt with the logo of some band emblazoned on it, Megadon or Mastodon or something like that. His hair was long and greasy, almost down to his shoulders, and looked to be dyed almost the same black as his clothes. It did not look like he was supposed to be skulking around the Reform Club, but I had encountered more than one member whose rich children were going through a rebellious period, so couldn't be entirely sure. I decided to be gentle in my initial inquiries and asked him if he was lost. Told him this part of the basement was off-limits due to renovations. The kid shook his head and asked if we'd found anything yet. Any of Leitner's pages.
Okay. Hold up. We're getting back into this stuff now. Someone looking for Leitner's pages, and the fact that this kid is looking for it?
Now this took me aback a bit. I wondered how long he'd been standing there, because Rachel and I had just been talking about the man. Jurgen Leitner was a businessman from Norway, I believe, who used to have offices in...
Okay, so that's also interesting, that he's from Norway. I don't know if that's been brought up before or not, but I remember something about that. I think, what episode was it? It was the episode where I think it was the episode where the statement giver's girlfriend's roommate got into a cult, and he went to, like, he messed with his girlfriend. He went to confront her. He went into like a chapel of complete darkness or whatever. And then at the end of the statement there, I think John was talking about how something with this company was stationed up like way north, like as far north as they could go, like in Norway, where it's always super dark. So that's also very interesting. So it seems like there might be some tie-ins with that potentially. Interesting. Yeah, growing dark, I think. Yes.
the ground floor of the building next to the Reform Club at 100 Pall Mall. I don't know what his business was, but when I was first getting started back in '87, we got a call from Mr. Leitner requesting a consultation in his Pall Mall.
So 87. So he was still around in 1987. I mean, I highly doubt it would be 1887, you know? So, I mean, who knows?
Office. At that point it was just me and Rachel, and we mostly did stone restoration and alteration, so we assumed Mr. Leitner wanted our opinion on a property outside of London. Our reputation back then was not sufficient to get us access to any of these sort of central London buildings we now work on. When we first met Jurgen Leitner, he looked very much like I had imagined him. Portly, middle-aged, short blonde hair in the middle of going grey, well-tailored business suit. His office surprised me, though, as it was almost completely bare, save for a desk and 2 chairs in front of it. There were no tables or bookshelves or filing cabinets or anything like that. He asked us to sit down, and though he spoke with a very faint accent, his English was perfect. We made small talk, but he seemed impatient, eager to talk about whatever it was he wanted us to do. I asked him what the job was, and he stopped and looked at us closely. Then he said he simply wanted us to dig a hole. An unusual request, but not an unreasonable one, so I asked him whereabouts this was going to be. He rose, walked over to the corner, and pointed at the floor. He said he needed a hole put through the floor. I thought there would have been a basement under there, and he said, no, the building's basement didn't go under these rooms. He smiled, an odd little smile as he said it, which put me a bit on edge. Now, there was no way we could do a job like that without the building owner's permission, and I told Leitner this. He began to get shifty then, and tried to tell us he already had the permission. When we told him we'd need to confirm it with the commercial landlord, he got very defensive, told us that it was fine and he'd need to discuss it with some other contractors first. When we told him we'd just need to have a quick phone call with the owner, he started screaming that we didn't understand what we were talking about, that he didn't need to explain himself to the likes of us, and there were some things that were too important, too powerful to be owned.
Interesting. So it's almost, I wonder if it's a situation where he's like trying to bury some of these books or something like that, right? Where it's like, found some of these books, they're starting to mess with them in some kind of way, and he's urgently trying to bury them. And yeah, he's getting kind of belligerent because he needs it to be done, and he wants it to be done as soon as possible. And he doesn't want anyone else. He wants, I think, as little amount of people as possible to know where these might be buried, potentially. I don't know.
Then he just started yelling at us in Norwegian until we left. We didn't bother contacting the owners of 100 Pall Mall in the end. It was, without a doubt, the weirdest interview with a prospective client that we'd ever had, and being so close to the site of it had Rachel and I reminiscing when this teenage burnout turned up. I asked him if he'd been eavesdropping, and he shrugged, and again asked what we had found. I was just about done with this kid, and started to tell him that he was going to have to leave, when Rachel interrupted me and asked what there was to find. The kid laughed, as though he and Rachel were in on some private joke. "Can you smell it?" he said, and for a brief moment I could smell something. Damp old stone and musty paper, just a faint whiff. It took me off guard, and I think that was why I just stood there as he walked past me and picked up the hammer. He strode over to one of the walls and, with a swing far stronger than I would have thought possible from his age and skinny frame, he buried it into the wall. I heard a...
So this was from 2002, right? So this isn't, again, because I was wondering if... Is this a young version of Jared Key? I don't remember how old he is. And, like, the more recent statements. I want to say he's more middle-aged. This is 2002, and in present time, it's like 2016-ish. So, what? I mean, if he's like a teenager-looking person here, 20 years later, he could be in his 30s, close to 40s, upper 30s, maybe early 40s. So, maybe this is Jared Key when he was like a teenager. He's looking for the books.
Scream high-pitched, but it definitely didn't come from any of us. This was enough to break one of the walls, and, with a swing far stronger than I would have thought possible from his age and skinny frame, he buried it into the wall. I heard a scream high-pitched, but it definitely didn't come from any of us. This was enough to break me out of my stupor, and I ran over and wrestled the hammer from the kid. He struggled and flailed, though he didn't say anything. As I tried to calm him down, Rachel called me over, and I looked at where he'd hit the wall. In the center of it was a neat hole. The other side was darkness. There shouldn't have been anything behind the wall except Foundation.
Whole other room, it's not on the plans.
Real basement wall. I let the kid go and walked over to get a closer look. Rachel started to examine it with her tools before she confirmed what I'd already guessed. That it was a fake.
Yeah.
It looked like someone had blocked off a passage and then very carefully disguised it. It was at this point that Alf returned, and we had some considerable explaining to do.
Some explaining to do.
The kid, who said his name was Jared, just sat there sullenly, listening to his CD player and waiting. When we asked him how he knew what was behind that wall, he just shrugged and told us that his mother knows all about this stuff. He didn't elaborate as to what this stuff might have been. We should have waited until morning and told the Reform Club staff.
This might be the story of how his mom got one of the books. They might have found the book here and he brought it to his mom. Potentially.
We'd found. We should have handed Jared over to the police, but Alf was always too curious for his own good, and he suggested we have a look inside. Rachel and I half-heartedly tried to argue against it, but I think deep down we wanted to know just as much as he did, so in we went. Knocking through the rest of the wall didn't take long. It had been built to look like the rest of the basement, but hadn't been.
It's also interesting that he'd mentioned that it seems like even as a teenager with his thin frame, he was able to use the sledgehammer with like a strength and effort that he wouldn't have expected. So it seems like even already he might have some kind of more supernatural stuff going on. I mean, his mom already, we know has been into some stuff. So who knows what his mom has done to him in some kind of ways, maybe he was born, with some kind of, maybe he was born from some kind of ritual and it was just like had supernatural abilities from the beginning or extraordinary abilities from the beginning, I don't know. But yeah, I figured this was Jared. So interesting.
Knocking through the rest of the wall didn't take long. It had been built to look like the rest of the basement, but hadn't been constructed with the same skill. 10 minutes later, our coffees lay forgotten on the floor, and we stood before a passageway leading off into the musty darkness. A gentle breeze blew from this entrance, which didn't make any sense at all. We had plenty of torches, as you often need them during night work, so we each took one large one and a
They actually have flashlights. Oh my god. It's amazing.
smaller backup in case the first had any problems.
And they're smart about it.
No
They're smart. They have multiple flashlights in case one fails. Oh my god.
Jared to stay outside, but I could see immediately that, short of tying him up, there was no way we were going to keep him out of there. Tying him up did feel like a step too far, so we settled for keeping a close eye on him as we went inside. The passageway was cold, and the air thick with mildew, but the stone walls were in very good condition. Rachel said it looked to be from the mid-19th century, probably remains of the basement of the Carlton Club, which used to be located in what was now 100 Pall Mall.
Interesting. You know, for a second I was like, I wonder if this is the same manor that was in the Schwarzwald episode, but then I was like, no, that happened in Germany, and they're still in London. So that can't be it. Huh.
It was with a start that I realized that she was right. Based on where the corridor was going, we must have been underneath the building. Almost exactly where Jurgen Leitner had wanted us to dig almost 15 years ago. We walked for some time, longer than I would have expected, given how big I remembered the building above us being. Alf kept asking Rachel if the corridor was getting narrower, and every time she would dutifully measure the width and inform him that no, it was exactly 5 feet wide. I couldn't blame him, really. I've never had any sort of claustrophobia, but I was finding it hard at points to catch my breath, to dismiss the feeling that the walls were pressing on me. Jared.
I wonder... I think it would be kind of a stretch, right? But I wonder if these tunnels lead into that cave network from the episode where they went cave diving.
Walked on ahead, seemingly unbothered by the place. We came to a crossroads, or more precisely a star. The chamber was small, round, and featureless, but there were doorways leading out in a circle. I counted 13, not including the one we had come in from. Looking down some of them made me feel oddly queasy. There was one that, for all the world, it felt like I was going to fall into it. Another was so dark that our torches didn't seem to reach more than a few feet inside.
Interesting. So I wonder... I mean, I don't know how many, like, entities or beings or eldritch creatures, gods, whatever you want to call them, there are in the Magnus Archives. But I wonder if, like, he said there was a star in this. I don't remember if he said there was like a certain number of points in the star, but he said there's like 13 passages, and I wonder if each one is supposed to represent or lead to something for a different entity, something like that. You know what I'm saying? I wonder if that's the case, because he's saying like each passageway is giving him a different feeling. One makes him feel like he's going to fall into it. One is dark beyond dark, et cetera, et cetera. So like, I'm wondering if each of these passages leads to maybe some kind of place where you could offer something to one of these various entities or something like that.
In the center, it felt like I was going to fall into it. Another was so dark that our torches didn't seem to reach more than a few feet inside. In the center, there was a date stone.
Right.
It read, Robert Smirke, 1835.
Robert Smirke.
Balance and fear.
Balance and fear.
I don't know how much you know about famous London architects, but Robert Smirke was one of the foremost proponents of the Gothic revival in the early 19th century. His work was some of the first to use concrete and cast iron, and often described as theatrical. A description that makes a lot of sense when you look at the grand columns of the British Museum, his most famous building. Later, I would look up a list of his works and discover that he had indeed built the Carlton Club in that exact spot. It had been destroyed in the Second World War during the Blitz, and the club itself had moved premises, but it looked like the underground foundations, or whatever this place was, had not been damaged.
That makes me wonder, right? What's the name of the place? The Carlton Club?
Exact spot. His most famous building. Later, I would look up a list of his works and discover that he had indeed built the Carlton Club in that.
That's what it sounds like, the Carlton Club, right? Unless I'm mishearing that. But I wonder if that club was supposed to be where representatives, avatars of these entities or whatever would, they could socialize together, but then go down below into this basement and do whatever rituals they were doing, to these beings, entities, or whatever. But then just when World War II happened, the place got destroyed and they had to move, So that's kind of fascinating.
Exact spot. It had been destroyed in the Second World War during the Blitz, and the club itself had moved premises, but it looked like the underground foundations.
So that also makes me wonder, if the club had moved, did they build another area similar to this to worship these entities elsewhere?
Or whatever this place was, had not been damaged. We stood there for some time as I explained this to the others. It took some time to do so, as, with the exception of Jared, I got the impression that none of us were in any hurry to go down the other tunnels. A deep apprehension seemed to have settled itself in the pit of my stomach, and everyone else also seemed to feel it. Then, without warning, Jared started running full pelt into one of the passages. I'm not sure which one it was of the 13. I called to him to come back, but got no reply, and Alf took off after him, running into the darkness and quickly turning a corner. Rachel and I looked at each other for a few seconds, but we both knew what we needed to be doing. I followed Alf into the passage, while she headed back down to the entrance to get help. This tunnel wasn't as dark as some of the others, but it was damper, and the walls seemed oddly slimy. After a few yards, the stone became so slick that I found it hard to keep my footing, and I fell. I put my hand onto the floor to push myself up, and it came away faintly tinged with red.
Yummy.
I heard Alf cry out from further down the corridor. He sounded utterly terrified, and I started on towards him again. I saw lights from up ahead, and was about to call out when Jared came running back out of the darkness. He was clutching a book in his hands, and clearly wasn't paying attention to where he was going.
I wonder if that means down each of these paths there might be a different book, or something along those lines, you know what I mean?
He barreled right into me, knocking me to the floor again. He was only a skinny kid, but he was so strong, and kept his footing, disappearing back into the darkness towards the entrance. As he passed, I heard a small clattering sound, as though something were falling behind him. I reached out slowly to try and raise myself off the ground, and felt something small and oddly smooth lying there. I shined my light on it, and saw a small bone.
Right.
From a bird, I think.
That's what I was saying. I think this is the story about how she got this book. Right? That's what I was saying earlier.
I felt something small and oddly smooth lying there. I shined my light on it, and saw a small bone. From a bird, I think, or maybe a rat. I looked around, and there were a few more scattered about the corridor. I'd fallen harder this time, and managed to hurt my knee quite badly. I was just about able to limp to the end of the corridor, and there I found a small, round room. Against the walls were old bookshelves, decayed and empty, save for a few mouldering pages.
This very much sounds similar to what was happening at that Schwarzwald Manor or whatever. They found the tomb down there, and there was that like emerald casket or something like that, right? and then a bunch of bookshelves around there, and then the only book that was salvageable was one of the Leitner books, or one of the books that became part of the Leitner collection, I should say.
Stained and rotten, and one of them looked like it had a mummified hand laying on it. In front of that one, in almost the center of the room, lay Alf. He was dead. I couldn't see any injuries on him. He didn't even seem hurt. But looking at how still he lay there, the terrified, awful expression frozen on his face, there was no chance that he was alive.
It's also interesting. I mean, maybe, again, because of his mother's, like, healings knowledge or whatever, and these, like, occult things, that maybe when Gerald was born, or perhaps through various things that she's done, he is immune or resistant to these various things. But I mean, like, he was able to run in there, grab the book, and get out fine, whereas the guy chasing him is dead. So that's another interesting, thing that's going on here, is he was able to get in and out okay, you know? And obviously he doesn't seem to be affected. Like, he doesn't have this, I mean, we're not hearing his side of the statement, right? But from his actions, it doesn't sound like he's really afraid or apprehensive or worried that anything's going to happen to him. He, like, is specifically there looking for this book, it seems, and he knows that there's a passage there, and he knows where specifically to go to get it. Now, whether it's because his mom told him where to go and what to look for and what to do, or maybe he's being guided by someone or something else, or he found this knowledge on his own somewhere, I mean, we don't know. I would assume that because this book ends up in his mom's possession, that potentially she sent him there to do this, but it could just be that he went there to find it on his own, and then she took it from him. Maybe she was able to, maybe the reason he killed her was because through various, occult means, spells, rituals, who knows, whatever else, she was essentially able to influence him or control him and make him do things. And eventually, when he got old enough, maybe he became resistant enough to it, and was like, I'm not dealing with this anymore, and then offed her, and now has gone around trying to collect these Leitner books and anything else to prevent them, destroy them. Like I've said, I feel like he's almost kind of like a John Constantine kind of character, where, like, he really has an understanding and knows what's going on and how to combat these things. And he seems like he's going around, in present time at least, trying to prevent certain things from falling into the wrong people's hands or whatever, because he seems like he was the episode in the hospital with the lightless flame and that guy being burned. It seemed like he was trying to, off him. He obviously offed his mom. He burnt one of the Leitner books and destroyed it, so it seems like he's trying. And he also has, doesn't he have, like, symbols of open eyes on his body as opposed to closed eyes that were a part of that church cult, so, like, it seems like he's working against some of these cults, entities, whatever, as compared to a lot of other things that seem like the Lucas family and whatnot that are working to worship or gain the favor of these other entities. I don't know.
He lay there, the terrified, awful expression frozen on his face. There was no chance that he was alive. On his motionless chest and around the base of the bookshelf, I saw more of those tiny bones. That's where my memory begins to blur. I know I made it back to the basement of the Reform Club where Rachel was waiting with the police, but I think I got some of the wrong passageways first. I have the vaguest memories, flashes of a pile of paper completely covered in cobweb. A figure stood in the darkness, a stranger I didn't know, but was sure meant me harm. My skin burning, hot.
So yeah, the web stuff that could represent a hive, stranger in the darkness, that's the darkness stuff. Uh, a stranger, he thought he knew that he meant them harm. That could be like the anglerfish. Fire thing here is the lightless flame potentially, or whatever entity deals with that the like burning or whatever from the episode where the guy pulled down the tree or whatever and found the Horcrux or the phylactery or whatever.
Choking on smoke down there in the dark. When I was out, I was questioned by the police, who followed Rachel in to retrieve Alf's body, and were successful, though they came back out pale and shaking. There was no sign of Jared, nor had Rachel seen him. I was then questioned again by the staff of the Reform Club, who instructed us in no uncertain terms to rebuild the wall and finish our original job. We were given to understand that the police were handling the matter, and if we pursued it closer, then we would not be getting any further work from members of the club.
Very interesting.
As this covers almost everybody who can afford our services, we complied. It makes me feel sick, though. Like we're just abandoning Alf, dishonoring his memory. It's not even like he had any family to miss him. It just feels wrong. I guess maybe that's why I'm talking to you. Do try to keep my name out of it if you follow it up, though. Okay? Statement ends. On the one hand, this statement represents a complete dead end, as no one involved is both able and willing to talk to us. Over the last 3 months, Sasha has attempted to contact Mr. Silvana, Rachel Turley, the management of the Reform Club, and any of the police officers involved. All of them flatly deny any of this ever took place. Alfred Bartlett's death was listed as...
That's very fascinating. So it almost is like club owners and maybe even the police might be in on whatever is happening down there. That's kind of fascinating. If they're flat out denying any of this, yeah.
A heart attack suffered during routine maintenance work, and none of the coroner's reports provide any details out of the ordinary. The kid, who I think it is reasonable to assume is none other than Jared Key, remains just as impossible to contact as he ever was.
I'm curious. I have a feeling eventually we're going to get an episode where we get a statement from Jared Key, and I'm very fascinated to see what that episode's going to be like. Maybe not. They might keep him kind of as like a vague third-party perspective character that comes in and out of episodes and does things, but I feel like eventually we'll get a statement from him of some sort, but we'll see.
From an evidence standpoint, this case is a complete bust. However, too many of the names and features match with other statements for me to dismiss it.
Yeah.
Not to mention the fact that business records do list Jurgen Leitner as having hired out an office on the ground floor of 100 Pall Mall between 1985 and 1994. He was, apparently, one of the premier worldwide dealers in rare and antique books at the time, with items selling for the sort of sums where an office in Pall Mall doesn't raise any eyebrows.
Well, I'll wait until they're done here.
If this strange basement is really there, then perhaps his choice of location was not simply a display of status. Clearly some of his books were there, and I can't help but wonder whether that was where they were found or just where they were stored. The other major point of interest is the fact that this complex appears to have been designed by Robert Smirke. You should have seen Tim's face when I told him. Architecture is one of his specialist areas, and he has always talked of Smirke as one that fascinates him. How did he phrase it? A master of subtle stability. From a professional standpoint, it also interests him that Smirke's buildings have higher percentages of reported paranormal sightings than any other architect of similar profile. He hasn't been able to find out much about the Carlton Club specifically, at least not anything relevant to this statement. In his later years, following Smirke's official retirement in 1845, there were all sorts of rumors about his interests and religious preferences. If there was a scandalous sect or bizarre cult, his name would always be seen mentioned among those meeting with them. He also started putting his name forward to design churches, despite his claimed retirement. He was never taken up on these offers. Interesting, but fundamentally not that useful for the case in hand, especially since we have been unable to get permission to physically investigate whether this place even exists. It seems we've reached something of a dead end.
Static there?
No pun intended. And record.
Either that's static or that's the magnets or maggots. I think it's the maggots because, yeah.
Investigate whether this place even exists. It seems we've reached something of a dead end. No pun intended. And record. God damn it! Martin! Martin, where did you put the rest of the extinguishers? Martin!
Oh Lord, they're coming. They're under assault. Is she there now? Did she bust in?
John, did you call
Excuse us?
Looking for the archivist.
I'm sorry, you two actually meant to...
Won't take up your time.
Just got a delivery.
Look, you really can't actually...
Package for Jonathan Sims.
Says right here.
Oh, well, I don't really know.
Are these the guys from the coffin delivery service all of a sudden? They're coming in and dropping off a package now?
Where he is.
We'll just leave it with you.
Be sure he gets it.
Okay, I will, but you really do have
Of
to
course.
actually...
Much obliged.
Stay safe.
I'll try.
Your recorder's on, by the way.
Might want to change that.
Oh, so it is. Thanks.
No problem.
At all.
I can never remember the name of that delivery service. Interesting. This is a very fascinating episode.
The Magnus Archives is a podcast distributed by rustyquill.com and licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike International License. Today's episode was written and performed by Jonathan Sims. It was produced by Alexander J. Newell and Mike LeBeau, and directed by Alexander J. Newell. To comment on episodes, make donations and view links, images, videos, and show notes, visit rustyquill.com. Rate and review us on iTunes, visit us on Facebook, tweet us on Twitter @TheRustyQuill, or email us at mail@rustyquill.com. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for making such a cool show. Well, there you have it. That was episode 35, Old Passages. Very fascinating and interesting episode. Got a lot of stuff to talk about here at the end. But, as you heard the man on ways you can find them, links will be down below to the Magnus Archives playlist, the Rusty Quill Podcast YouTube channel, and to their website. Please do me a favor. Go to their YouTube channel, like all the videos you've liked. Hit the sub button on the channel if you haven't already. Check out their Patreon. Check out their YouTube memberships. And check out their website for ways that you can give them some extra love and support if you'd like to do so. So yeah, fascinating episode. We see Jared Key as a teenager and seemingly knows about another Leitner book, and this is apparently the Leitner book that ends up his mom ends up having. So there's a lot more questions brought up with him, him. Did he go down there by himself specifically to find this book? Did she send him down here specifically to find this book? We know eventually that Jared offs his mom and then is seeking books from the Leitner collection to potentially destroy. Like I said, my theory about him seems like he's kind of like almost a John Constantine kind of character, where he's like trying to work against these various cults and entities to try to keep things from getting into the wrong hands and or to prevent other innocent people from being hurt by this stuff. But maybe I'm wrong. That's just where it seems like it's kind of going right now. Yeah, exactly. I never remember that. I always remember that the hope part, but I don't remember the Brecken part of it. So yeah, so there's that stuff going on with him. Obviously, we get a little bit more about Leitner himself, but then we also have a new character, this Robert Smirke, I think, is what his last name was. So it seems like what's going on is that this Robert guy was very much into a lot of the occult stuff, maybe, you know, knew about a lot of these entities. It's interesting that he was trying to be contracted, or at least coming out of retirement, to specifically build churches. So it makes me wonder, like, if he wanted to build churches and underneath them have, you know, specific spots to corrupt the churches, and or to just hide areas for these occult members to worship other entities. That also kind of goes back to, I don't remember the episode name, but the episode, the two-parter episode that happened, where the guy, you know, had this quote-unquote hallucination or vision about being in a church and giving a sermon. It makes me wonder if that was some of the stuff that was going on in a lot of these you know, religious cult things, and that maybe that's part of what Smirke was trying to do, was make more churches like that. But it's interesting that, you know, he had made this like underground area with 13 different passages. Each one seemed to lead to a place of either to worship a different entity or to give an offering to a different entity of some sort. And then the club that was above it was destroyed during World War II, but nothing, I assume that because of everything that happened in World War II, it just, you know, people forgot about what was down there, or maybe it got blocked off because of the bombings and yada yada. And so people kind of just forgot about it. And then over the years, through Jurgen Leitner finding all the various books, you know, and bought a house there, or built a house there specifically, and then wanted to have passages built underneath that reconnected to that area. I think that's what happened. I think, you know, this Robert Smirke or Smock or whatever his name was, you know, had built that area up, and then Leitner, you know, rediscovered where that area was and was trying to have passages built back to it so we could get down there. So it makes me wonder if there is a book for each of these entities, right? And all, you know, Leitner was collecting all of the books for the different entities, and that's how we learned about them. I don't know, but very fascinating episode. Very fascinating episode. It was a lot more lore and backstory. Again, more stuff with Jared Key. And yeah, just a lot more with Leitner, and just some kind of just more of the history of, you know, this world so far. Very fascinating episode. A lot of different stuff. And then at the end, you know, John got a delivery as the infestation seemed to have gotten worse. It's also interesting, you know, I don't know if it's a coincidence, because they've been kind of quote unquote under siege by these maggots, you know, for a while. But at the end of this particular episode, with them talking about the Leitner books and more stuff with Jared Key and yada yada, that, you know, he kind of came under assault from them as well. So I wonder if there's other implications about him specifically, you know, dealing with this case that made them more aggressive toward him, you know, or what. So I guess we'll have to find out on the next episode when we get around to doing episode 36. So, but yeah, that was episode 35, Old Passages. Great episode, as the Magnus Archives episode continued to be great episodes. Really enjoyed it. If you've been enjoying it as much as I have, like I said, links will be down below for ways to go give them some love and support. If you would like to give my channel some extra love and support, there is a join button underneath the video, as well as a link in the description. The YouTube membership benefits and tiers that I have to offer, so you can check that out if you'd like to. There's also a bunch of playlists on the channel for other universes that I've done reactions to. The SCP Foundation, Warhammer Fantasy, Warhammer 40k, Greylock Backrooms, and more. So you can check those out if you have interest in, you know, those universes and would like to see those reactions. Regardless, thank you if you are still here at the very end. I greatly appreciate you watching the video all the way through. I really appreciate the support. Thank you very much for doing so. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, consider leaving a like and a subs. It helps me and the channel grow. And yeah, we'll see you guys in the next one. Have yourselves a wonderful evening.